From California, I would now recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming.
Well, first of all, I disagree with the idea that that there's a constitutional requirement for conducting a census so that we can have different varieties of rice at Costco. I almost want to say that almost all countries conduct a census.
Mr. Chair, that's racist.
Does the gentlelady have a... Does the gentlelady from Wyoming have a response?
Rice or hamburger or any other food stuff, that isn't why we conduct a consensus.
But, Mr. Chairman, those words, as ill-advised and foolish as they were probably not engaging in personalities. So I think we can let that go and call it even.
Yes,
after...
Mr. Chair,
I was using the terminology that Mr. Yang used, if you weren't listening.
I was listening, but I was also getting your vibe.
The gentlelady from Wyoming will proceed.
Almost all countries that conduct a consensus actually have a citizenship question, and the UN says that it is a best practice to include a citizenship question on these censuses. Countries that ask about citizenship are Canada, Australia, Ireland, Germany, and Mexico. The source of this is the New York Times. Mr. Mayfield, I'd like to focus on the Census Bureau's decision to utilize the differential privacy methodology for the first time in the 2020 census. I am incredibly concerned that intentionally creating structural inaccuracy in census data collection at the lowest unit has impacted the reliability of nationwide census counts, congressional reapportionment, assignment of presidential electors, redistricting, and federal funding allocations. In light of these concerns, could you briefly explain the steps that the Census Bureau took when adopting and implementing this differential privacy within the 2020 census?
To put it in shorthand, Congresswoman, this was done at the civil servant level without any legal opinion being obtained. The decision was made by John Aboud, who is the Director of Privacy and Statistics, and a small group of people working with him. There was actually opposition from other parts of the Bureau because the test repeatedly demonstrated that it would falsify data, including the block level that you mentioned, but anything below the state level. They proceeded with that because they wanted to do differential privacy, not because there was any need for differential privacy. Data swapping, which was the method used in the previous 3 censuses, had always been adequate, and to this day, there is still no problem with it. There is a 2023 study by researchers from Harvard, NYU, and Columbia that finds that data swapping is just as good as differential privacy, but it doesn't alter the data. There was no reason to do this. Now, to give you an example of just how bad it is, again, this is post-use of differential privacy. That study found that the use of differential privacy, for instance, if you had 3 Hispanics on one block, could create a variance anywhere in the state of 0 Hispanics or 6 Hispanics. In other words, a 100% difference either way. All of the data, as Mr. Miller alluded, below the state level has been subjected to differential privacy. Because of the way the algorithm works, it's a top-down algorithm, none of the data can be released in unaltered form. You cannot actually get the results of the survey below the state level. So you may know there are 9 million people in Indiana, but you don't know how many people there are in Muncie. You don't know how many people there are on Mayfield Street in Muncie.
They cooked the books, and they did so intentionally. Is that a good way of describing it?
That is accurate.
All right. So they didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act. They didn't put this out for notice and comment. They didn't solicit information from people, from statisticians or economists or even states or local governments about how best to do the census of counting their people, as to do as Mr. Yang says, which is to know how many people live in our country. They didn't do any of that?
It's even worse than that, Congresswoman, excuse me. They didn't do notice and comment. There's a debate about whether or not that's required. But there are numerous committees, to allude to something that Congresswoman Scanlon mentioned in her opening statement, in which the census interacts with consumers of census data and partners, including state and local governments, including interest groups. Every single statistical group objected to this by letter. Every single state, the National Conference of Legislatures, objected. Maine objected. It's a blue state. Utah objected, a red state. The city of Alexandria, just across the water here, very blue, objected. Maricopa County, very red, objected. The House Progressive Caucus, they were right, they objected. The Mexican American Legal Fund, they objected. The Native American tribes objected. Everyone knew, it was well known that this would not work. And the census civil servants, a small group of them, went ahead with it because they wanted to do it, not because there was any need, and disregarding the fact that it made the census inaccurate at the enumeration stage.
They did it because they wanted to cook the books and they wanted to manipulate the data to have the outcome that we actually had, which is overcounting people in 6 blue states or liberal states and giving them additional members in the House of Representatives. Is that fair?
If I might respectfully disagree with that poor part, I believe it was done out of professional pride because there was an obsession with using differential privacy. Several other speakers have alluded to the use of internet data and supercomputers, which is what John Abad mentioned. Congress does not exclude the use of outside data. If anyone here wants to grab census data and buy something from the internet or buy a credit card company's data and combine them, that creates no violation. There is no problem with doing that. Section 9 of Title 13 bars only the disclosure of personal data. In other words, your census form that you filled out for your house. The errors that have been attributed with respect to the number of people are based on post-enumeration surveys. In other words, the census does quality checks after the census, but those are models. They are not themselves enumerations, and they are no good or no better than the models and the data that's put in them. There are errors after every census that are believed. So what you do is you use that data to try to focus your next census and all your other data collections to make sure that you don't miss other people, that you don't overcount them. So it may be an educated guess that some states received more people and some states received fewer, but it is a guess. And it is certainly no better than the modeling that the people in the Bureau did.
Okay, and I know that I am out of time. What I would hope comes out of this hearing, however, is that we have solutions of what Congress can do to make sure that these inaccuracies are addressed and that we never have this kind of a mess again.
What followed was a sharp, no-nonsense challenge to excuses, deflections, and political spin as Harriet Hageman laid out an argument that put ranking Democrat Jamie Raskin under intense pressure to respond. Before we get into the details, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more breakdowns of the hearings shaping the country. The census was never just paperwork. It determines congressional representation, federal funding, and political influence for an entire decade. That was the foundation of Hageman's argument. From the beginning, she emphasized that inaccurate numbers could have serious consequences. They can reshape states, affect congressional seats, and alter the balance of political power. Her tone remained calm but firm, making it clear that the focus was not simply on partisan talking points. It was about accountability. Then came the central claim that the census data had been manipulated intentionally. Hageman pointed to disputed deadlines, changes in methodology, and questions surrounding transparency at critical stages of the process. Rather than presenting the controversy as simple bureaucratic incompetence, she argued that the decisions deserved much closer scrutiny. Point by point, the argument became more difficult to dismiss as an ordinary administrative mistake. Jamie Raskin attempted to redirect the conversation toward procedural issues and broader defenses of government institutions. But that approach did little to answer the central questions being raised. The more the discussion moved toward general assurances, the more attention returned to the underlying issue. Why were there questions about the accuracy and consistency of the data? The contrast was clear: specific claims and evidence on one side, broad defenses and political framing on the other. That was when the exchange became especially intense. Figures, timelines, and references to official statements were brought forward one after another. Each point challenged the idea that there was nothing worth investigating. The argument then returned to the consequences. Changes in representation can affect communities, states, federal resources, and public trust. When decisions based on census data have consequences for millions of Americans, even questions about accuracy deserve serious examination. By the end of the exchange, the debate had moved beyond the 2020 census itself. The broader warning was about precedent. If serious concerns about government data are ignored once, critics argued, future controversies could become easier to dismiss. Institutions only function effectively when transparency, accuracy, and accountability are taken seriously. The message reached beyond party politics. When government decisions affect millions of Americans, accountability cannot be optional. The exchange ultimately came down to one simple idea: numbers matter, accuracy matters, and public trust matters. Hageman made it clear that, in her view, the issue was about integrity rather than ideology, and when direct questions remain unanswered, that silence can become part of the story. If accountability matters to you, hit the subscribe button and stay connected for more deep dives into the hearings, debates, and political exchanges shaping America.